Looking like an good Friday morning. It's WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. It's Tim Radford here with you on a Friday morning, along with Sheriff Derek Palmer. Good morning,
Good
Sheriff.
morning. How are you?
Good. How are you doing on this great day?
I'm doing well.
Looking like another nice day in the 80s today.
I think so.
We've had some interesting weather this week, some downpours.
We have had to be sunny 1 minute and raining the next minute and thunderstorming after that and sunny again, and just that typical summer pattern.
Yeah, and the rainstorm, a lot of people were posting videos on Facebook on Wednesday evening, especially out between 64 West out toward the Ranger. Just came a flood there. No watches or warnings were issued, so apparently it didn't reach severe limits, but quite a bit of wind and rain and just flooded roads.
Well, we were leaving to go to church in Andrews, and as we pulled out, I saw all those dark clouds hanging down there, and it rained a little bit on our way up toward Marble, but I saw all those dark clouds down toward 64 West and that area, and at the time I thought it must be coming one good storm down there.
Oh. Well, hopefully we'll have a nice weekend of weather. It's not looking too bad. Maybe some storms on Sunday, but hopefully it'll be a nice week of weather. And we have a lot to talk about in the next 25 minutes or so. So let's go ahead and get started with the program. Your office has issued quite a few press releases this past week.
We did. Last week we issued 3 or 4, and there's a few more that we've not released yet that we're going to had some further investigations on. And but we'll be bringing those probably this coming week. We'll be releasing some more. A lot of the things that we do out there, especially drug-related crimes and those type of things, sometimes we can get immediate press releases out. Sometimes it takes a while to get them out because of just the investigation you have to do that goes along with it.
All right. One of the press releases was about a 39-year-old Murphy man who had violations of controlled substances, and he had a pretty big bond, if I remember correctly.
Right. I think it's around 100,000, somewhere along in there.
This was a large quantity of meth taken off the street. Can you tell us a little bit about that as my phone starts singing?
Off?
Yes.
It always happens, doesn't it?
Always happens. Even on silent mode, sometimes it starts ringing.
I can go all day. Well, very few days I go all day, but I can go a lot of times all evening and my phone won't ring. But if I go to church and forget to put it on silent, as soon as I walk through the door and the preacher starts, it goes off.
Yep. And as soon as you come on the radio on Friday mornings, it goes off too.
It goes off too, yeah. The particular one that you're talking about happened on June 8th, and they were our investigators had some information that a gentleman was riding around, had some stolen weapons and some drugs in his possession, and so the investigators were out looking for the vehicle that was described to them, and they located the vehicle in question and followed it a little while and made a vehicle stop down near, I think it was down near Murphy where they actually made the vehicle stop. And upon searching that vehicle, they found some one of the subjects in that vehicle had an existing warrant for him. So they conducted the traffic stop based on knowing that he had the warrant and made that arrest. And when they searched the vehicle, they also found a large quantity of methamphetamine and in the vehicle, and it was either mid or high level trafficking amounts. It was a pretty substantial amount. I think it was somewhere around 120 grams of meth. And
I know we've talked about this before several times about trafficking.
Right.
For folks that may have tuned in for the first time this morning, listening about this, when we talk about trafficking, that's not just for personal consumption, correct?
That's correct. That's when you have the amounts that you sell. Sometimes they're already packaged to sell. Sometimes it may not be packaged yet. But just with the amounts in your possession is considered that it's not personal use, that you're doing that to make money off of and to put drugs on the street. For methamphetamine, the minimum amount is 28 grams. You got to have at least 28 grams to be in the low-level trafficking range. I think this particular subject was somewhere, like I say, in the 120-gram range.
Oh, wow.
So
that's quite a bit.
Right. It was quite a bit more. So I'm pretty sure that got him into high-level trafficking, but if not, it'd be at least be mid-range trafficking on that. And it's something that we continue to work on every day, and the drugs that are in our area. And so we just try to be aggressive against that. And I think also with this person that was arrested too, I think he had been arrested for heroin. Also with that, not just methamphetamine, but also with heroin before. So it's a lot of times these guys break out into different things, and it depends on what the flavor of the day is. A lot of times depends on what you have there.
All right. Another press release was titled "The Traffic Stop Solves a Breaking and Entering," and this is involving three young men in our local area.
Right. This actually happened on the Highway Patrol was conducting a driver's license checkpoint in the Peachtree area, and one of our deputies was assisting with that with Highway Patrol officers up there. And when a vehicle came through there, kind of one of the similar scenarios from before, the deputy recognized a person in the vehicle as having existing warrants on them that we had been looking for. And so they pulled the car off to the side and started to arrest the person from that vehicle. And I think that on this one there was not just some stolen property that was recovered out of that vehicle, but I think there was also a large quantity of marijuana seeds and other paraphernalia in that vehicle. And so they arrested him on the drug charges also with that. And I think they were charged with felony possession of marijuana based on the amount of seeds that are in there. And there was also some existing warrants. There was firearms that was recovered, some other stolen property that was recovered out of that vehicle. There was also, I think, some methamphetamine that was also in that vehicle that was found, and some other paraphernalia. And so I think there was 3 people that was arrested out of that traffic stop. So I have to commend our deputies. They're very good about when we have warrants on people about being aware of that and their facial recognitions and stuff. And a lot of times we arrest people just on situations like this where a deputy just sees someone driving by or sees them at the store or whatever and recognizes they have a warrant on them. And so I have to commend them a lot for that, about the efforts they put out to try to get these warrants served. A lot of people complain because they feel like their warrants are not served in a timely manner, especially if they go to the magistrate and take out a warrant. But it's one of those things, if we don't see them or don't recognize them, it's hard sometimes to serve those warrants. So we do the best we can, and we pick people up on recognition of that.
And one of the things you have to do is work closely with other law enforcement agencies in our area,
Right.
too. And another press release that your office issued and the town of Murphy issued an update today from their office is about and I was trying to figure out how in the world this happened.
You must be talking about the air conditioners.
The air conditioning. A lady is, let's see, she is, I'm not sure, she's a young lady. I don't see her age listed right here, but
Right.
she's a young lady.
I think she's 23.
23,
Yeah.
and she is charged with stealing 25 air conditioners from Walmart.
Right.
And this is just over a several day period. And apparently these turned up on social media sites, on the yard sale
Right.
pages, and
Yeah.
and this has been a very time-consuming story for me to keep following the comments on our Facebook page. I'll just leave it at that. It's,
Yeah, people have lots of opinions.
There's been a lot of opinions.
when you do those things, but unfortunately, we don't deal in opinion. We have to deal in facts.
Mm-hmm.
And when larceny is taking place and things have been stolen and we can recover those things, we have to do that. And the opinion of the person, whether they're a good person or a bad person, is kind of irrelevant. You know, we have to deal on whether there's a crime being committed or not on the character of the person. So. But yeah, this was a cooperation between Murphy Police Department. The air conditioners were stolen from Walmart here in Murphy, and the Murphy Police Department was conducting an investigation into the larceny of those air conditioning units. And while we were assisting them with that, like you say, some of those started popping up on Facebook pages and yard sale pages and things of that nature. And so we were able to obtain a search warrant for this young lady's residence to go search it, and I think there they found a quantity of those air conditioners at that residence. I think there was also some controlled substance violations there with that also. I think there might have been just paraphernalia. I don't remember. I don't think there was controlled substance. I think it may have just been paraphernalia that was discovered there at the house. But like I say, this was a conclusion of an investigation that's conducted by Murphy Police Department along with the Sheriff's Office. And just like the other crime that was solved was based on working with Highway Patrol. And so we try to work with Murphy and Andrews Police Departments and Wildlife and everybody out there. And so A lot of times when we can team up and work together to solve things, it goes a lot smoother.
The one statement I was trying to, and a lot of people ask, how do you steal 25 air conditioners from Walmart?
I would tell you, but I think I would cause other people to go steal.
Well, Dustin in the press release said she put them in the shopping cart and pushed them out the door.
Well, if he said it, that's what happened.
So I was like, I was like trying to figure out how that happened. So I'm sure
one of the things about stores and businesses is that, and it's not a secret. I don't guess I'm revealing anything that people don't already know, but for their loss prevention people and people that's working inside those stores, especially on crowded days when you've got a bunch of people in the stores, it's hard to keep track of everything that's happening, everything that's going on. Many times, even those alarms, the doors that go off, I've seen it myself many times. Even when it's not busy, I've seen people walk through the alarm and it go off, and them stop, and open their bag. They hadn't stolen anything. The scanner didn't demagnetize something or whatever, so they're waiting for somebody to come see them, and nobody ever shows up. So they just turn around and walk on out.
I've done that myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully it was legal.
I think it was. I was like, I do remember paying for everything, but no one showed up. So I'm like, I guess I'm free.
So sometimes, there may be loss prevention people there, someone to encounter you if they suspect you of stealing, but other times it may be one of those things where they're just so busy and a lot of people going on that, just like the air conditioners, you can put it in a shopping cart and push it right out the front door, and nobody sees that.
At one point, there were door greeters there all the time. They kind of checked receipts to make sure everything. Is there any kind of change in are security guards allowed that are hired by stores to be able to search for stolen merchandise?
Not really search. I mean, there is, even with loss prevention and things, there are some legal authority to detain people and question people. It's like everything else. You got to have a reasonable suspicion for doing that. You can't just stop random people and say, I want to search your stuff. If they're still in the store has the ability to look in bags, to make sure that everything in the bag has been purchased. You get into more civil issues when you try to search people and search underclothing and in their socks and, in their pockets and things of that nature. You get into different situation at that point. So, believe it or not, most people that steal, there's some exceptions, but most people who shoplift from stores really believe they can talk their way out of it. So they don't really run or they don't fight or anything like that. They just comply, thinking the whole time they can talk their way out of it until the police gets there and it's too late at that point, But there's a lot of different ways you can steal from a lot of different places, and we could talk about that, but I really don't want to give people ideas as to what to do.
Right.
Yeah. But, the criminal element out there, most of the time when you have people stealing, shoplifting, things of that nature, it's not the first time they've done it. And so they learn over the years. They learn what works and what doesn't work. And you may do it the same way 50 times and get away with it, but the 51st time you may get caught. So it's just one of those thrill things for a lot of people. So for some people, it's not about the merchandise itself. It's about the thrill of getting it and getting away with it.
Right.
And it's about making profit off of something and getting away with it. And like I say, people can make all kinds of excuses why they justify it, but if it belongs to somebody else, there's really no justification for it.
I like the old-timey parenting, like when we were kids, if we were to walk out of the store with a piece of gum or something, our parents would take us back and face-to-face with the store owner and make us apologize for taking something with that. And I always think of Andy Griffith's show with that and Opie.
Yeah.
And the good values that you learn from
my wife and I actually one time at Walmart, this has been years ago, but we were going through the line and was purchasing things, and when we got to the car, we realized that the little seat that the kids sat in, where you unfold and you set a child in there, we realized there was something, I don't even remember what it was now, but there was something laying there that we didn't pay for. And we got back to the car, and Cindy said, "Oh, we didn't pay for this." And she said, "I want to go back in real quick and pay for it." And she took it back through the doors and took it in to pay for it. And they just looked at her like she was crazy for coming back and paying for it, And but like you say, depending on the way you're raised and what you determine right and wrong.
It's a good feeling, though, that you've done the right thing. It really is.
It is. I'll share a little story with you about that. It's kind of getting off topic a little bit, but being honest and doing the right thing. I remember a story, I believe it was Adrian Rogers that told the story that after church one Sunday morning, he and some of his congregation had went to eat at a restaurant, and when he paid for the meal, the cashier gave him some money back, and he just stuck it in his pocket. He didn't count it, just stuck it in his pocket, and went on out in the parking lot, and they were talking with their parishioners, and he took the money out of his pocket to put it in his wallet, and as he did, he realized that the lady who checked him out had given him $20 too much back. And so, he's like most people. His first thought was, God's really blessed me. Here's a little extra money for the week or whatever. But the more he thought about it, he thought, no, that's not right. She's going to come up short on her register, and she's going to have to pay for it out of her pocket and all that. So I'm going to take it back in there. And he told the story. He went back in to her and gave her the $20 and said, here, you paid me $20 too much. And her response was, yeah, I know. And he said, you know? And she said, yeah, I knew I gave you too much money. He said, well, why did you give me too much money? And she said, because I was at your church last Sunday and you preached on integrity and honesty, and I was just going to see if you were honest or not.
All right.
And so she told him, she grinned as she took the money back, and she said, and I'll be back at your church next Sunday.
That's a very good lesson.
Yeah. And so you never know who's watching. You never know what's going on out there. So integrity is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. So
I like that.
That's what we want to try to portray. But even with the sheriff's office and trying to make decisions out there, we try to make decisions that's best for the public. We try to make decisions that's best for the community, and not make decisions that's beneficial to me or beneficial to individual people, but what's going to benefit our community. And so we try to have a little bit of integrity about ourselves, and that's what we try to instill in our deputies.
Very good. All right, there's lots going on this week. There was a shooting in Virginia, earlier this week. Can you tell us a little bit what happened there?
You've probably, if anybody's been watching the news, they've been seeing what's going on. I had actually called Congressman Meadows the day that it happened, and I talked to them about it. And there was, of course, tension going on in Washington at the time that all that was happening. But basically, every year for 109 years, they've had a Republican-Democrat softball game against each other in Congress, and it's a charity event that raises money for needy causes there in Washington. And so they do it every year, and but they take time about the Democratic congressman will play sometimes and practice, and then the Republicans will, and just take a time about until the game day. And so they were at the Republicans were in the park practicing, and this individual, his name is eluding me right now, but this individual who came to the fence up there and asked if it was Republican or Democrat, and when they told him it was Republican, he pulled out a rifle and started shooting. There was a congressman that was shot in the hip, and several people were injured. I think there was a Capitol Police officer that was shot during the process. And so it was something that really kind of shook up the Washington area and shook up the congressman up there. And if you remember, there was a congresswoman that was shot a few years ago. And so I think it's one of those things that there are people in Washington are kind of debating now as to what they do about security and those type of things there. Unfortunately, we're living in that type of world where we can't just have political disagreements anymore. Mm-hmm. We can't just have differences of opinion. It's boiled down to now, if you don't believe like I do, then you're evil, you're not a real person type of attitude. And so for people who have mental issues and things of that nature, they justify this in their mind, that you're evil and therefore I have a right to do this. Mm-hmm. It is important to point out, though, the gentleman that did this did legally purchase a gun, did have it, went by the book on how to get it. And so, when you talk about gun laws and those type of things, it's kind of hard to restrict all those people that may have potential for that, because you never know what's going through someone's mind. You never know. Someone may be totally sane today but may not be tomorrow. Right. And so it's kind of hard. And that's one of the things I struggle with at the sheriff's office as far as doing purchase permits and concealed permits and things of that nature. Is obviously, I'm pro-gun, and I want everyone to have the ability to have a gun and carry concealed if they would desire and things of that nature. But I also have to weigh that with public safety, and certainly don't want to issue a permit to someone who may cause harm to the public. So that's one of the constant things that we struggle with back and forth, is issuing those permits. And our ladies that do that, quite often they'll come back to the office and say, "Hey, Sheriff, we got one here that they don't really quite are deniable, don't really meet the criteria for that. But, some of them, if it's purchase permits, I have the ability to deny on moral character, and that's ambiguous at
Right.
best. So some of those, they may say, you may want to consider this one, just based on what he's been charged with in history and some stuff here. He's not convicted of anything. He's not to a place where he don't, where we can ban him and he's not qualified. But you might want to make a decision here whether you want to issue this or not. So
And that has to be a tough call.
it is a tough call. It is a tough call.
Because, like you, people should have the ability to protect themselves too.
Right.
But they also should not have the ability to go into a school and start shooting people.
Right.
So there's that choice.
It's a fine line. It really is a fine line there. And like I say, you try not to deny people their constitutional right to bear arms, but also you don't want to deny someone else's right to live.
Right.
And so some of those decisions can get kind of hairy, and sometimes it takes me a while to make a decision on it.
That's probably why the gun debate has gone on for so many years in our national news about.
Well, one thing about the gun debate, and I also want to mention this while we're talking about it, is just a reminder, because a lot of people get off kilter or misguided when they have these debates. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that I should be allowed a gun to protect my home. There's nothing in the Constitution that says I should be allowed to have a gun to skeet shoot or to deer hunt or anything like that. What the Second Amendment was written for was for us to bear arms to protect ourselves against our own government and to protect ourselves against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And so that the reason that debate has rocked on for so many years is the fact of that, according to our founding fathers, they believed that everyone should have the right to defend the Constitution. Everyone should have the right to protect themselves and to protect their government, their freedom, their way of life. Even when you think about it, there is some mention of defending yourself in your home and protecting yourself and your property. But the purpose of it was to defend ourselves against the government, to defend ourselves against our own government if necessary. And so when you enter into these debates about high capacity magazines and what kind of weapons you can have and all that, if you want to look at it at its foundation, it basically was saying you should have the right to bear the same type of arms that the government has that's over you. And so if you're looking at that and it's saying, okay, the government has a right to carry machine guns and carry automatic weapons, then the argument on the extreme right on the other side of that is you should have a right to carry automatic weapons and rocket launchers and all those kind of things. Now, like I say, there still plays into that factor of public safety.
Right.
Obviously, there's people around that you would not feel comfortable with, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with knowing that they had nuclear weapons in their basement.
Right. Right.
So we have to be reasonable about this, but that debate itself is not defending my right to skeet shoot, or it's not defending my right to go hunting on this fall. It's so that I have the right to, if some foreign government or even our own government decides that it don't want to follow the Constitution anymore and that they're going to go against it and restructure our government, that the citizens have a right to defend themselves and have a right to defend their way of life and their freedom. That's what it's all about. And that's why it's raged on for so long, because when you enter into these conversations, you get into the personal protection. You get into sporting events. You get into all these other things. But all those are just sidebars that kind of give us off track of what the real topic is. And the real topic is defending yourself against your own government and foreign and domestic.
And a lot's changed since all that language was written years and years ago. I mean, the technology and weaponry has changed too, so that plays a big part.
It does, and I think that's kind of what both sides of this argument. I think that's kind of where the debate really is now. It's because when it was written, everybody carried muskets.
Yeah,
Put
some gunpowder in there. And,
that's it. So the government had muskets and the people had muskets, and so it's kind of an even playing field. And so as technology has increased, as time has went on, just like we talked about the nuclear weapons or rocket launchers or anything like that, you have to play the factor in of that our government may have that, but do we want citizens riding around in their private automobiles with hand grenades and rocket launchers in their car, And so there is a public safety issue that plays a factor in that, because you have other constitutional rights to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. So if we're denying other people's rights to live, if we're denying other people's rights to be free, and we're oppressing them by allowing rocket launchers and grenades and machine guns to be everywhere on the street, then we're actually violating other constitutional rights. So there's no easy answer to it.
There's no easy. That's exactly what I was thinking. No easy answer.
Right.
All right. Let's see. How are we doing on? Oh, we're almost out of time, I can see. But let's talk about now. I know you, with social media, we have so much more interaction with the public than we ever thought.
I made a statement a couple weeks ago that got me in trouble, by the way.
What's that?
The statement I made that if I was God for a day, I would do away with Facebook.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had some people confront me about that.
Did you get blasted on Facebook for that?
No, I really didn't get blasted, but there were some people loved it, some people didn't.
That's funny. I know that your office posts, like, whenever there's a change in residence for a sex offender,
right.
Then that's public record, and sometimes a residence might be maybe near a campground or
right.
under a bridge, and people don't like that.
Right.
But tell folks what can be done.
Well, one thing is, I mean, there's laws. Mm-hmm. In other words, most sex offenders, depending on their crime, can't live within so many feet of a school or where daycares are. And so there's certain restrictions on that. But other than that, we can't tell someone where they can live or can't live. And so if they're living in a camper somewhere, or if they're living in a hotel room, or if they're living under a bridge, as a sheriff's office, we can't tell them they can't live there. That takes a property owner, that takes, whoever they're renting to, whatever, to tell them whether they can live there or can't live there. But one of the things about the sex offender laws is the fact of that if you have a sex offender that's moving around, say he's living under a bridge or in a camper or in a tent, he's moving to different places. The law states that wherever you go to, you have to come to the sheriff's office and report that. Mm-hmm. So if he's in a house today and living at 123 Main Street, and he gets kicked out of his residence and he has nowhere to go except under the bridge somewhere until he can find somewhere else to live, if he's going to be there longer than a week, he has to go back and register that with the sheriff's office, and this is going to be a temporary address of where I'm at. Once he leaves there, if he picks his tent up and he moves to a campground somewhere and he's going to be there longer than a week or two, he has to come back and report that, that I've moved from this location to that location. So when you see these locations where the sex offender registries of locations, most of the time when you have those living under the bridges and tents and campers and hotel rooms, those are the temporary places that they've come to register till they can find